Was lent a book by Dave Dorman and by Frederick Buechner, and he has a section in the book's titled Whistling in the Dark. And he has a definition of fatherhood which I want to share with you. Since today's Father's Day, happy Father's Day to all of you. And we are all stunningly good human beings and wonderful fathers, all of us. Without comment. Buechner writes this: when a child is born, a father is born. A mother is born too, of course, but for her, it's a more gradual process. Body and soul, she has 9 months to get used to what's happening. She becomes what is happening. But for even the best prepared father, it happens all at once. All of a sudden, a nurse is holding up something roughly the size of a loaf of bread for him to see for the first time. Even if he should decide to abandon it forever 10 minutes later, the memory's going to nag him to the grave. He has seen the creation of the world. It has his mark upon it. He has its mark upon him. Both marks are, for better or worse, indelible. All sons, like all daughters, are prodigals if they're smart. Assuming the old man doesn't run out on them first, they'll run out on him if they're to survive. And if he's smart, Dad won't put up too much of a fuss. A wise father sees all of this coming, and maybe that's why he keeps his distance from the start. He must survive too. Whether they ever find their way home again, none can say for sure. But it's the risk he must take if they're ever to find their way at all. In the meantime, the world tends to have a soft spot in its heart for lost children. Lost fathers, on the other hand, have to fend for themselves. Even as the father lays down the law, he knows that someday his children will break it, as they need to break it, if ever they're to find something better than the father's law to replace it. Until and unless that happens, there's no telling the scrapes they'll get into trying to lose him and find themselves. Terrible blunders will be made, disappointment and failure, hurt and loss of every kind. And they'll keep making them even after they've found themselves too. Of course, growing up is a process that goes on and on and on. Every hard knock they ever get knocks the father even harder still, if that's possible. And if and when they finally come through more or less in one piece at the end, there's maybe no rejoicing greater than his in all of creation. End quote. It's become pretty commonplace these days to speak of God as our Father. But we oftentimes forget what a wonderful and deep and lush metaphor it really is. In the ancient Near East, at the time when the Bible was written, at the time the people were going through their shaping as a nation of Israel, there were lots of gods and goddesses then, just as there are today. You know, there's lots of perspectives on how the world and creation was started. Science continues to try to roll back to the beginning, to that first proton set that exploded into the Big Bang. There's others who protest desperately that the world was created in 4004 BC. For some of you who like a homework assignment, you can start with the book of Revelation and start counting backwards. And Bishop Ussher in the Middle Ages came up with 4004 BC as the state of the start of the world. And that's much of what you'll hear in creationism. That's the perspective and the background of the creationists. The trouble with that is, what do you do with the dinosaurs? We ate them, if you go with Bishop Ussher in the Middle Ages, in 4004 BC. You'll note that in the story that Laura read on the creation story, that the dating wasn't particularly critical to the event. It was the creativity of the Creator whom we know as Father. And in his creativity and imagination, he just brought things into being. And in the doing of it, after each step of the way, he stopped, and he looked, and he was pleased. Even on your worst day, even on your ugliest day, which all of us have, but not all of us. On your really yucko days, you never forget the Father who created you out of his love and created you in his image and likeness, and because of that, you are one who has been created to be a parent just as God is a parent. And what that means is that you create and live out of your love for the world in which you live. You might not like everything in it. You may not like all of the behaviors and craziness going on in it. But that does not diminish for one moment the fact that you carry the image with you every day of your life, and that you're calling as a follower of God, our Father, to be one who meets difficulties with imagination, creativity, and hopefulness. Part of that likeness and that image we've been given is the likeness. Part of it is the ability to reflect, to think through with our minds and our hearts and spirits what it is that's going on around us and how we're going to address them in a way which not only solves the problem, but also does it in a way that diminishes the pain and the hurt that may go